And welcome to the Trinity Stamps YouTube channel. This is Lauren Taylor, and I'm excited to be back to share with you some winter holiday card ideas with the adorable Sparkle Season 4x6 stamp set. We're going to start with a blue and silver super shiny holiday card for Christmas. Blue and silver are my favorite colors for Christmas cards. I just really love snowflakes and shine and shimmer, so we're going to use that color scheme for today's first card. I'm stamping on some 9x4 slimline mixed media paper, and I'm using a VersaFine Clair ink in Morning Mist, which is a light gray color, and it's also embossable, is that a word? You can emboss with it. So I grabbed some chrome ultrafine embossing powder from Ink on 3, and I'm completely covering the image that I stamped. I did the tree shaped of all those beautiful gems as well as the small individual ones. I thought I was going to use them together, but my card is kind of busy and I didn't want those gems to get lost, so you'll see what I do with them at the end. I'm grabbing my Hydra Color Winter Frost Shimmery Sparkle watercolor sample card here, and I just put some water on my glass mat, and I'm using a fine brush to add water to the different little watercolor samples here, and I am coloring in all of my gemstones. Now it takes me a little while to color them in, and it takes a little bit to get that watercolor nice and saturated and get some really vibrant pretty colors, but these are so shimmery in person. They're beautiful, and I'm going to use all three of the blue and teal colors to color in all of my gems. Once I'm all done coloring them in, I'm going to take that lighter color. It's more of a clear shimmery. It looks silver in the little sample circle thing. But when you actually add it to the white cardstock, it's kind of like a clear shimmer. So I'm going to take this color and I'm going to go around and color around all of the gemstones in my tree. And I actually go around each of those small little stones that I stamped on the right as well. So that way when I die cut it out, it is as shimmery as possible. Again, we're going super shiny for this holiday card. I'm going to set it aside to dry, and we're going to move on to stenciling a background. I have a grip mat that I'm just going to put on the center of my glass mat here to help with my stenciling, and I'm going to get some blue cardstock, again going with that blue and silver, and I'm going to grab one of my dies from the A2 Clean Cut Layers. This is set A, and I'm doing the second largest die, so I would still have a bit of a white border when I attach it to my card base. Using the Stars and Sprinkles layering stencil set, I just picked one of them. It doesn't really matter in which order you want to go in. And I'm going to grab one of my brushes, and I'm starting with Tumbled Glass Distress ink, and I'm just distressing that ink onto my cardstock through the stencil. So you can see here, I'm just brushing it on. I did kind of wipe off my brush a little bit before I started distressing, and I will do that in between each layer, but I'm using a dye-based ink and it's not really too much of a big deal going in between different shades of blue. So I'm grabbing the next stencil and laying that down, and there's these little engravings so you can line up perfectly to what you've already stenciled, which is so nice. Love that about these stencils. And I'm adding in some broken china, and then I will add the third stencil, and I'm doing Mermaid Lagoon. For the fourth stencil, I wanted to do a little bit of stencil paste, and of course we're going to bring in that silver. So once I get my stencil laid down, again looking at the grooves that are in the stencil to line up with what I've already distressed on, I'm going to grab some silver lining lunar paste from Ranger and Simon Hurley, and I'm just adding that through the stencil. I'm using a palette knife, and normally I would get one of my wide scrapers, but I just am using this one tool, and I'm adding the stencil paste through this fourth and final stencil of the set. Once I get complete coverage, I'm just going to swipe up all of the excess and put it back into my jar because I don't like to waste my beautiful stencil paste. And here you'll see the final stencil reveal. And I think it just looks so fun. It's so festive. Again, love blue and silver together. So I'm going to set that aside to dry while I clean up all my stencils and my little grip mat. By now, my watercolor has dried, so I'm taking the coordinating dies. Again, this is the Sparkle Season set, and I'm going to use some repositional tape just to attach all of those dies to my mixed media cardstock so I can run it through my die cut machine without worrying about pieces getting lost or my dies adjusting. So once I have all of those die cut out, my background was actually dry. It is incredibly hot where I live, and with the window open, it definitely dried pretty quickly. I also took the shadow die for this stamp set, this gemstone tree, and I die cut some super shiny holographic cardstock to back my tree. I just wanted that extra layer so that it really popped off my background. And using the same blue cardstock, I'm going to stamp my sentiment also from the Sparkle Season set. And this time I'm going to stamp with Paradise VersaFine Clear ink, and using my little tool here, I'm going to stamp it onto that blue cardstock. There are coordinating dies for the sentiment as well. Love that. My favorite thing ever are coordinating dies for my sentiments. And again, using repositionable tape to keep all of my dies in line. And I went ahead and die cut them out. You do need to die cut the and second because it won't fit in between the sparkle and the shine. But no worries, it still cuts beautifully. You just have to run it through your die cut machine twice. I'm going to glue my gemstones onto that back holographic layer of cardstock. So just using some wet glue, so it gives me a little bit of wiggle time to make sure that I get my gemstone tree completely lined up to the center of that holographic cardstock. And it is kind of a slippery cardstock, so want to make sure that it's nice and attached before I move on. I'm going to play around with my sentiment. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to layer it. I was thinking maybe doing it towards the middle of the tree, but I end up wanting it a little bit lower so I have more, I guess, surface area to glue my sentiment down. I was also thinking of adding the gemstones on the tree, but like I said, my front of my card is busy enough, so I'm going to put those on the inside of the card. I have my A2 card base using my scoring tool just to make sure that that fold is nice and really scored and folded over. And I'm going to use some tape runner and I'm attaching my background, my stenciled background to the card base. So I'm centering it as it is, like I said, one of the nested A2 dies, so it fits perfectly with a little bit of a white border. I wanted to pop up my tree, so I'm using some thinner foam adhesive and I'm going to go ahead and completely cover the back of my tree so there is lots of stability when I add it to my card base. I also use the excess negative pieces of foam adhesive because, again, I don't like to waste in my craft room, so definitely use all of my foam adhesive to its fullest capacity. Then for my sentiment, I'm going to use my wet glue to glue them down since there already is a bit of dimension from the tree. I'm using my grid mat to help me make sure when I attach different elements of my card to the card base that it is as straight as I can get it to be. So I'm using my wet adhesive to glue down my sentiment again, so I have that little bit of wiggle room to make sure my sentiment is straight and centered how I want it on my card. So that is my sentiment attached to the front of the card, and I messed around quite a bit. I edited it out because it would have been way too long of me trying to figure out how I wanted to add these gems, but they were too light to really pop off my background, and I didn't want to cover any of the gems that I had on my tree, so I thought, you know what, we're just going to glue them on the inside, so it adds just a little bit of fun from the outside to the inside. So using the jewel picker side of my tool, I used wet adhesive and just glued in those different gems. I glued 3 on towards the top and 2 towards the bottom, so there's room to kind of sign and wish, well holiday wishes in the center. But here is how this first card turned out. Again, super shiny, super shimmery, and my favorite holiday color scheme. For our second card, we're going to get a little bit interactive and create a light up card. So I'm bringing my stamp set back out and I'm grabbing my Perfect Pastels vellum paper pack. And I was going to go with green, but something about that pink sheet of vellum was just calling to me. So we're going to use that on our card today. But you can definitely recreate this card with white vellum or any of the other pastels. They have this beautiful shimmer to it, which I think is just perfect for this stamp set. I'm putting it inside my Misty and I'm going to emboss this one as well, but I'm going to emboss with a black ink and I'm going to be using some black cardstock so my tree, when it lights up, just really pops off my card. So I'm getting it centered, or not centered, but placed onto my vellum paper. Again, I'm going to the side so I have plenty of room for future projects on this vellum. And I use my VersaFine in Onyx Black this time, and I'm going to use some clear embossing powder for my embossing of my tree. So I'm grabbing my little coffee filter and adding my embossing powder, and then I'll use my heat gun to melt that embossing powder down, and it will create a nice black glossy pop off of this pastel pink vellum cardstock. It's so pretty. I love it even just like this. I'm grabbing my dies. These are the Stitched Layer Stack Mini Slimline, and I grabbed the largest one, and I made sure that it would fit on the width of my die, and I'm going to go ahead and die cut out my Mini Slimline out of some glossy black cardstock. I'm also grabbing the tree die that will cut close to my gemstones. It's not the shadow die. This is the actual cut around the tree die. And I'm running it through my die cut machine. So first with my mini slimline so I can see where I can center it onto my background. So I'm going pretty high up. I wanted to leave some space on the bottom for a sentiment, and I ran that through my die cut machine to create a window in my panel. As you can see here, the gems just really shine already through that black cardstock. And even if you didn't want to make your card light up, it's so pretty just like this. I'm trimming down my background to be slightly less than 3 inches wide, so that way it will fit perfectly behind my window. I started adding some tape runner here, and I'm going to realize once I'm done adding a few strips that I still need to stamp on the front of my background before I start gluing things together. I get really excited sometimes and glue before I'm ready. So here I'm going to go, oh wait, I need to add a push stamp so that way my card receiver knows that my card is interactive. So I cut down a slimline card base. This one is 3¼ by 6¼ Yes. So I I trim my white cardstock to be 6½ by 6¼ and then I scored the 6½ in half. So that way it would be 3¼ by 6¼ And I have plenty of room in that upper right hand or even left hand corner to fit my Easy Light like little press button, my little contraption here, my battery pack. And I want to make sure that I get my lights lit up where I want them. So I'm here just making sure that they're going to light up well behind the vellum. And you can see they're so pretty. I wish I had an Easy Light with 20 LEDs on them so I could light up all of those gems, but there's only 3, so we're just going to place them randomly behind the tree. So I'm going to grab some tape. This is just some clear Scotch tape, and I'm going to figure out where I want my 3 LEDs to go. So using the window, I'm going to put one towards the top, one in the middle, and one on the bottom. And I kind of wish I would have put them a little more in than I end up doing, but I still think it turned out really pretty. Definitely have fun with your Easy Lights if you duplicate this card. I just love these lights. They're so easy to use, like their name. And I'm just using my Scotch tape to place those LEDs in place. And I'm making sure that I'm not getting too large of a piece of tape that it will show past the edge of my black cardstock. So you can see here, I'm just double checking. I'm looking at where my lights are and I'm happy with where they're placed. So now I can wrap up the rest of my wires for the LEDs and get my battery pack placed in that upper right hand corner where I will add my push stamp. And this is from the Paper Crafting Magic 4x4 stamp set. This is one of my first Trinity stamps. I love it because I love making interactive cards. So it's a perfect stamp set for things that light up, things that spin, things that move, things you can lift. So it's a great stamp set to have. I am placing some adhesive behind my battery pack so I know where I can glue it down to the card. And this is when I, again, was about to put it together, but remembered that I needed my push sentiment. And I'm going to emboss in white. So I just add a little bit of anti-static powder, and I'm going to grab my embossing ink, and I'm going to stamp push in that upper right-hand corner, and then use that white embossing powder that I have from Ink on 3 to emboss it. So again, just tapping off the powder, and I'm going to use my heat gun to melt that embossing powder down. Once it's dry and cooled down, I'm just going to use my hand to wipe away the rest of that anti-static powder, but you could use a Swiffer cloth as well. That's normally what I do, but this paper's so glossy, it was so easy. So once I have my push embossed onto my black cardstock, I'm going to peel off that release paper from my battery pack. And I'm just going to gently put it in place, and I put it too high. So I'm going to peel it off and lower it a bit. And once I have it in place where I want it, I know that I can go ahead and really secure it in place. So I push it down a little bit more. And this is when I started adding more adhesive to the back. Again, really excited to put my card together. And I realized I didn't stamp my sentiment on the bottom. So I went and grabbed from the Sparkle Season stamp set, May Your Holidays, and then I'm adding sparkle because I love shiny things and I want everyone's holidays to be shiny and sparkly. And I'm going to go ahead and use a Misty to make sure that my sentiment is straight. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did for my push sentiment. I'm stamping it with some embossing ink, and I'm going to use my white embossing powder so you can see my sentiment. May your holidays sparkle. Once that's done, I can finally start putting my card together. So I'm struggling to pick off the backing of my adhesive, and I realized, why am I doing this to myself? Let me get my little tool out, and this is so much faster and easier to peel off all the release paper. And then I'm going to line up my tree inside of the window and adhere that vellum to the back side of my glossy card front with a hole, again, cut out perfectly so the tree fits nicely inside. Once that's in place, I can go ahead and grab my foam adhesive strips. I'm using Trinity Stamps because it's a little bit thicker and there's plenty of room for my card to sit above that battery pack. I don't want it to be glued so hard that the button is pressed. Obviously, I want the card receiver to press the button to see it light up, and I don't want my battery to drain. So it's a perfect thickness for interactive cards like this. And I also made sure not to put any foam adhesive where my battery pack is behind my black cardstock. So here you can see it's lighting up, it's looking wonderful, and I wanted to add some more shine. So I ended up cutting out that shadow die with the inlay die that cuts around my different gemstones out of that same kind of shimmery holographic foil like I did on the previous card. And I just wanted more of that tree to really pop off the card, so I'm gluing this around the window. And I love this too because I was thinking this would make a really great shaker card as well. So if you're not into light up cards, you could definitely do this card with an acetate window and have a shaker too. So I did get a little bit of glue on my glossy black cardstock, but I just wiped that off. I'm going to get a wet towel later and kind of try to get more of that off. And I went ahead and I wanted to add some more shine. If you can't pick up what I'm throwing down here about how I feel about shine, these are the cave crystals and they come in various sizes. So I used the jewel picker end and added a bunch of those little cave crystal flat-backed embellishments to the front of the card. I thought it matched that holographic paper really well, and it turned out really fun and really cute. For my final card today, I thought it would be fun to create a different kind of card, a different holiday card with this stamp set. Now, I know this is kind of geared towards Christmas with the shape of the tree gemstones, but I wanted to make a New Year's Day card. So, just to show you another way you could use the stamp set, and I'm going to create my own background with it. So, using my blackout ink from Ink on 3, I'm going to stamp my tree and I'm going to get it as close as I can when adding the next area of my background. So it looks more like a, full background image rather than a bunch of triangles. You could still tell it's triangles, but I think it looks really good when you stamp it a bunch of times on this piece of white cardstock. Now this is an A2 size, I believe, but I will trim it down with one of my A2 rectangles. So I zoomed in a little bit, but I know my markers are a bit hard to see, so I'll try my best to remember all of the ones I used. That was R200 and this is R190, and that's what I use to color in the pink rhinestones or gemstones on my background. And this is more of a, I guess, red pink. I have YR090 and YR070 for my orange colors. And of course, I'm just going to go in rainbow order. I wanted a super colorful New Year's Day card. So for the yellows, I have Y070 and Y050 to color in a bunch of yellow gemstones. For my yellow green, I have GY4 and GY7, but I of course need some tealishy green because I just love teal. So I have G360 as the dark tone and G340 as the light tone. And these are Ohuhu art markers. I should have specified that when I started, but these are a alcohol marker. I have PB7 and B050 to color in my blues. For violet, I have V160 as the darker tone and V020 as the lighter tone. And then I wanted something a little more deeper in the purple, so I have V210, and then I am going to use the lighter tone of V070 to blend those together for a darker purple. I wanted something a little more pink, so I brought in RV070 and RV180 for the lighter tone to finish coloring all of my beautiful rhinestones. So like I said, I'm using another one of my A2 dies. This is from the set A, and it was the third largest die because I wanted to make sure it completely cut around all of my rhinestones. And I went ahead and sprayed it with some iridescent glitter dust, and you'll see that later. For my sentiment, I'm going to do some heat foiling on some pink cardstock, and this is from the Happy New Year cut and foil die set, and I'm using some Prism hot foil from Spellbinders to not emboss, but hot foil onto that pink cardstock. I'm using the coordinating die to cut it out, and here you can see as best as I could, it's so much prettier in person because it's a really light shine of glitter, that iridescent glitter dust on my background. I originally was just going to attach the Happy New Year just like this, but I felt like it just got so lost on the card, so I'm going to grab a sheet of blue cardstock and I'm going to go ahead and use that to glue my sentiment or attach my sentiment onto the card. And I also decided to die cut that Happy New Year again out of the same black glossy cardstock from the last card, so that way that really pops off the card, and it does kind of match my rhinestone since I did stamp them in black. So I'm adding my background to a sheet of kind of green teal cardstock, and now I'm going to glue the black cardstock like a drop shadow behind my pink sentiment, so a little bit to the bottom right, and I'll do that for all three pieces of my sentiment. In order to give my blue piece of cardstock a little more dimension so it pops off my busy background, I'm just blending on a little bit of my Broken China Distress ink around all four edges of that blue cardstock. I'm going to use my tape runner to attach this strip down, and I'm going to use my grid mat to make sure it's centered. So I'll go ahead and apply that adhesive, and then I'm going to make sure that this 1-inch strip, it's 4 1/4 by 1 inch, is centered onto my card base. Once that's attached, I'm going to add some foam adhesive behind my Happy New Year sentiment so it pops off the card. Now, I did, like I said, wanted something super colorful and super fun for a Happy New Year's Day card, but you can definitely make this any color scheme, which is so great. You could even maybe look up Pantone's new color of the year and create a New Year card using that new color or colors. You know, sometimes they do too. I just think that'd be really fun to ring in the new year. So once I have my foam adhesive squares behind all three parts of my sentiment, I centered them onto the strip, and then I'm peeling off all of the release paper one by one and attaching my sentiment onto that blue strip of cardstock. Once that's done, I'll go ahead and get a card base ready. Again, this is an A2 card, and I'm going to attach this right onto the card base. My green background piece of cardstock is already A2 in size, so it will just cover my white card base completely. But of course, I got to add a little bit more bling to my card. So I'm going to grab my Rainbow Rhinestones bundle. This comes with 12 different colors, but I only choose 8. I choose kind of the lighter pink. I do the 2 shades of orange, yellow, the light green, the light blue, and the light purple. And I just picked one from each of the different containers in this bundle. And I chose random sizes. I just kind of picked whatever one I grabbed first kind of a thing, and I'm going to glue them in a kind of diagonal pattern from the top left to the top right in color order. Now it's really hard to see here on camera because my background is super colorful, but I'm grabbing my tool here and picking up each rhinestone, adding a little bit of wet glue, and then gluing them down. Again, they're kind of in rainbow order, so from pink to purple. And that will finish off this Happy New Year card. Here you can see those fun rhinestones across my card. I absolutely love how this turned out, and I love using this stamp set in maybe a different way than it was originally intended. So here's one more look at my light up card. So fun. I love the pink popping off that black background. And of course, my favorite holiday color combo, silver and blue. But of course, these are easily customizable to whatever your favorite colors are, or maybe for the card receiver. But I hope you enjoyed these 3 different takes on the Sparkle Season stamp set. Make sure you check out all of our links down below. And here are some more videos you can watch. Bye!